I'm willing to bet that if you're not getting results with your content, you're probably getting the same lack of results when it comes to sales. And the reason for that is the same way you teach and communicate in your content is likely going to be the same way you teach and communicate on your webinars or sales mechanisms. And the way that most people do it is they talk to the logical side of the brain, which means that you're teaching information, you're going in the form of steps, you're speaking from education, you're speaking from solution. However, we all know that most decisions that drive behavior, whether it's engaging, watching, or buying, are all subconsciously driven. And when you start to learn how to take your skills and knowledge and transform them into a communication style that works with the right part of the brain that drives the results you want, results can happen literally overnight. And today I wanted to bring on a guest who got to experience that as they went through our program and was able to work with me one-on-one. We're going to break down exactly what they did, how they did it, and the results they got. So if that's interesting to you, well, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we have a special episode for you guys. If you know me, you know that I love to teach from experience. I always say that it's you never really learn anything by reading a book. You might get a lot of information. You don't learn to ride a bike by reading a book. You learn to ride a bike by actually riding the bike. And so today what I wanted to do is talk to one of our students who also became a one-on-one client that I've been working with over the past 6 months to a year on his content, and the results have been pretty unbelievable. And I wanted to break down what we did, what changes were the biggest shifts, and just tell the story of how we were able to use messaging and content to make such a drastic change. So today we have Dr. Kyle Stanley. Is it okay if I use the word doctor? Is that
sure? Yeah. Okay? I mean, you don't have to call me doctor, but
I just call you doctor the rest of the episode now.
Yeah, right.
But anyways, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. Let's just start off by, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about what you do and your business?
Yeah. So I am a dentist, and I help other dentists master their mental and relational health so that they can have sustainable success in their careers and in their lives.
I love it. And then how do you do that through a series of consulting courses, or what is that? What is the business model?
Yeah. So I do in-person events. I do a lot of speaking. I have some low ticket offers. I have a signature online course, and then I have a mastermind as well.
Okay. Love it. All right. So I know where you were before coming into NGM, New Generation Mastery. But do you mind telling the audience a little bit about, like, what were you doing? What were some of the issues and problems you were having? And we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, I've had a following on Instagram for a long time from my because I've been a speaker in the dental world. So just from being out and speaking 30, 40 times a year, I've had a lot of people following me. But I feel like I never could bring my messaging together. It was kind of fragmented. It was hard to explain concepts in a short form that is usually seen on Instagram. I could explain things in long form during live events, but to do it in 90 seconds or to do it in a few minutes was pretty challenging for me. And so once I joined NGM, I mean, one of the things that I really, really grabbed onto was the thought reversals. And what was crazy, I mean, I know I told you this before, but for like 18 months, all I did was thought reversals. And on my Instagram. And I went from, like, I don't know, 25,000 or something to 50,000 followers, really just from doing thought reversals. And I'm one of those students, as you know, being, because we've been one-on-one for a long time too, is I'm one of the students that you tell me to do something and I do it. And so, like, on NGM, you said, take one idea and make it a thought reversal and do the OG thought reversal, and then do the context switch, and then do it in video form, then do it in, words form. And so I had all this content, and when I boil it down to really the long-term effect of how this helped me was because of all the analytics that I got, I started to see what topics my audience really resonated with, and that was what turned into some of the low ticket offers that you and I did together.
I remember that. And it's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't really understand or grasp when it comes to marketing and messaging and things is people just guess. Like they just guess at this is what my webinar should be on, or my low ticket offer should be on, or this should be on. But really content, and I know something we sort of looked at is like content really is the secret or the map to the gold mine. Like it will tell you what's landing, what's not landing, what stories, topics, all of that stuff. And so I know that's what we started to do. But I know like at some point you went beyond thought reversals. And so, what did the process of that sort of look like for you and the results? What did you start to notice inside your business as we start to incorporate more and more of the, different styles of content?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the themes from NGM resonated with me so much, really refined where I was going in my business. When I started NGM was when I really was getting serious with this business. And even from just like how I was teaching, because you teach a lot of how to teach as well, how people think. I mean, how to tell stories. So many of those concepts. I mean, I used it last night when I was doing a live event. You know, it was not even about the things that I normally talk about. It was on my AI company that I built, and it really just it's so weird because for me, I've been an educator for 15 years, but I learned so much in the last few years just from your course and working with you. I don't know. I'm trying to think of some.
Well, I think that's one of the things that, again, that people don't realize right off the bat is that, if we want to make more sales, we want to connect more, we have to become better teachers. And when I say better, I think it means more of like a concise teacher. And so it boils down to like what you talked about, which is how do we take this concept that in like a classroom setting where people are there intentionally wanting to learn that, this concept that's going to take us 30 minutes to go through, how do we boil it down to a 5-minute concept? And in a way that someone who's not there to necessarily learn, finds it intriguing and interesting and feels heard and understood. And so we have to add in all these different elements, but like you said, using stories and metaphors and really a bigger focus, I think, on the concept of what we're teaching versus the nitty gritty of the how to.
Because you really taught me how to fish. Like I can make my own thought reversals on the fly usually now, or I can tell stories better. I can open even how I open my live or my webinars, my live events or my webinars that you taught me how to do is such a great way of opening compared to how I used to do it.
Right. Well, and I love the fact that you said that you now know what to do inside this new company, which, by the way, we have to chat about. I didn't know you started another company and an AI one at that. So we'll chat later on that. But that's one of the things that I tell people is like, this is much more than just like a messaging framework. What this is it's a way of communicating. It's a way of learning these communication skills that you will use for the rest of your life. You will use them in anytime you speak or any other future business or anything along those lines.
It's so true. And that's actually one of the things that I teach in my course is, as dentists, all the dental professionals that I speak to, we go to school for 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, 16 years, depending on their specialty, to learn how to do surgery, to learn how to treat teeth, to learn how to do veneers, to learn how to do this stuff. We don't learn any communication styles. We don't learn any soft skills. And that's where most of my students and my colleagues suffer. That was where I suffered too. And so learning some of these soft skills, you're exactly right. I mean, there's things that I learned in NGM or by watching you that I do with my kids or that I do with my wife, like it's real life.
Yeah. I do the same thing with my kids all the time now. It's just like thought reversal them that's actually, it's really funny. It was, my son said something to me the other day that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, oh, there's like, he has some sort of belief forming. And then I remember like doing a little thought reversal and then questioning, like getting him to question his own thinking around the belief. And then he came up to me. He's like, Dad, how'd you get so good at speeches? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, how did you get, like, you're so good at speeches? And I was like, well, I'm like, did you think what was in the car that was a speech? He goes, yeah, you're so good at being able to talk and say something and it makes sense to me. And I see things in a way I didn't see before. And I just told him, Will, the secret to that is asking the right questions. And that's all I was doing, was getting you to ask questions that got you to see things in a way you weren't seeing them before. And then you discovered it. I'm like, I didn't give you a speech. And I think that's one of the things with really great messaging that people don't necessarily realize is it's not about always preaching and delivering information and just being like, let me just educate you. It's about changing people's thinking, which is why I think thought reversals did so well for you. So I guess my question to you is, inside of your industry, I'm assuming the answer is yes, because thought reversals work so well, but I'm assuming were there a lot of beliefs that were sort of like old dinosaur beliefs that were causing problems in people's lives that you had to kind of come in and shift and change? And is that why the results were so powerful for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, dentistry is such a weird it's such a weird industry. It's very, very forward thinking, high technology, but there's also so many people that are still doing the type of dentistry that my dad learned in the 70s. And so you have a lot of dogmas, you have a lot of people that don't want to change, and you have a lot of challenges. You have a lot of, very high suicide rate. We're 17 times more likely to commit suicide. We're twice as likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and panic disorder. They just did a recent study in the UK, and I think it's like 50 or 60% of dentists have thought about quitting the profession. So you have people that just kind of slug through life thinking, I'm just going to do the same thing and somehow it's going to get better. And so it's really ripe for thought reversals.
Yeah. Can we go through one? Do you remember one of the top performing ones that you did?
Yeah, I mean, I can pull up my notes tab that has it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Like to see which one is, because one of the things that people, I know when they come in, they're just afraid to like ruffle feathers, or they're afraid that people aren't going to like them, or they're going to say they're wrong or whatever when they challenge beliefs. But there's ways to do it where it's gentle, it's non-aggressive, it's non-polarizing, it's more curiosity driven. Um, but at the same time, you can get up there and say the most beautiful thing in the world, and there's always going to be someone who has a problem with it. But when it's done right, the majority of people grasp onto it and get that mind blowing result.
Yeah, so here's a good one. And this is maybe one. Do you know what how much of your audience is female versus male? Do you have any idea?
Me personally, I think about 70% female.
Okay, cool. Then this may resonate with them. So here's one. Thinking that male and female dentists go through the exact same problems is wrong. Listen, I get it. If you take out our biology, we go through many of the same difficulties with problem patients, owning a business, and clinical complications. What makes female dentists have specific problems that us men can't understand? It's their biologic clock. I've mentored hundreds of doctors from around the world, and I hear constantly the difficulty these women face in balancing starting a family and focusing on their profession that they spent a decade or more pursuing, in addition to lots of effort and money. Many times they get to a point in their life that their business is humming, and then they have difficulties creating a family. They start to blame themselves and suffer incredible guilt. If they want a family and are lucky enough to have a child, they have guilt when they're in the office. They think they should be at home. When they're at home, they think that they should be in the office. The guilt leads to shame about how they handle their choices in their childhood bearing years. So please have compassion for our female colleagues who have very specific differences in their careers than us men. If you're ready to start mastering your mental and relational health, hit the like button and follow me for more tips on reducing burnout in dentistry.
I love that. And that one did well for you.
Yeah, that one did well. And whenever I've mentioned the gender differences, the female, how my female colleagues really suffer, there's a lot of love that comes out of it. Because what I've heard from what my female colleagues say is they can't talk about this stuff because it's looked at as complaining from them. So it's funny how they said, we're so thankful that actually a man brought it up, because it allows us to not to be looked at as complaining.
Yeah. I love that. And I actually love that one because it's a unique one in the sense that it's also a little bit of a connection piece too. Like the topic itself allows you to have that deeper connection because what you did in there, not only were you able to shift perspectives and a belief and change people's thinking and awareness, but you tapped into their exact situations and what they're facing through work because you're very specific on the exact situation or the problem. You were very specific on their thoughts, their feelings, but most importantly, what you did is you gave them a voice and the gift of feeling heard in a place where they probably didn't feel heard. And that level of connection is what really drives a lot of the trust inside of the brand too, because that's essentially what connection is. There's 3 forms of trust, but one of them is that connection, the know, the like, the trust, the human to human trust. And so that was a beautiful example because it sort of taps into both at the same time. And that's the sort of stuff that people that's the stuff that people don't really think about, like some people might get up there and just say like very aggressive and polarizing, like, no, women should be treated differently. And because of that, it's like almost demanding. Whereas this is more soft, compassionate. I know you're over here, they're over here. Let me meet in the middle. And then you really tapped into the specificness to drive a connection. And that was
one thing I really have taken away from you is the more specific you can be, the more people's ears perk up. I remember you talking about something about like, you gave some great examples, but the more specific you can be, especially like in the first few seconds of some type of context, or even when I open my webinars now, I try to be very specific, things that non-dentists would never understand, use our dental jargon, like on the distal of number 2, and you have the buccinator muscle coming and like all that kind of stuff. And they're like, yes, that's me. Oh my gosh, yes, that's me. And it really is great with audiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things too, is like, I think a lot of people will open up webinars with the traditional thing of like, well, here's what our agenda is today. You're in the right place if I have a gift for you here. Here's my personal story. And like, that does absolutely nothing like that. Like we should be getting them hooked in right in the beginning, and nothing gets them hooked in more when you have a really strong promise and title, but you tie directly into, if you're experiencing this, you've been trying that, and people sit there and go like, how does this person know? How do they understand? Do they have a video camera watching me? Now the level of attention is at an all-time high. Then you could do that other crap if you still want to, but you don't need to. And that specificness is what drives big results. And so have you been using that in like content topics as well when you choose your topics?
What do you mean?
So like when you go to figure out the topics of content you want, I'm assuming most people will stay very generalized and high level, like how to get more dentist patients or something like that. Whereas you could now, I'm assuming, well, I kind of know the answer because I helped you with, we've been working on your stuff, but it would be like, instead of how dentists can get more patients, it was like how a dentist can bring in 3 more patients this week without, and I forget what we would put there, but like a typical way of getting patients, like without networking or something.
Every piece of content I try to make so specific now. And a lot of that came from learning from you, is like, I know what my niche is now. I know exactly who they are, and I know what they're going through. Like, this is one thing, going through the different steps in NGM where you write down what are their problems, how are they feeling, like thinking what they're wearing, what they're smelling, what their day looks like really living through that. The more specific I got with that in my stories and in my examples and in my content, the more my business grew, the more my content grew, the more my audience grew. It was just being so specific that they're like, gosh, he gets it. He gets me. He knows what I'm going through. And that's why I think he could lead me, because he's been there.
Did it feel uncomfortable to get that specific in the beginning? Or was it a pretty easy transition for you?
I don't think it was uncomfortable for me, no.
Okay. That's good. And then I remember too, what we also did, and this actually kind of blew my mind a little bit when we started working on your stuff, is we actually, if I remember correctly, a lot of your low ticket offers were focused on just one specific issue. Like I remember one in particular, I think was about how to make sure people don't come back or try to refund dental work or something along those lines, right? Like it was a very specific.
Yeah, yeah, and we found that out through my content. Was so I ended up creating a low ticket offer called the complication compliance method, and basically because you probably don't have dentists, or maybe you have doctors listening. There's this weird thing in dentistry that if you get work done and something happens to it a few years later, people expect it to last forever. And they expect the dentist to do it over again. And there may be people listening to this going, yeah, they should do it over again. But this isn't the same in medicine. I mean, if I break my ankle and I go to the hospital and they fix my ankle and then I come back 6 months later and I'm still limping, they say, yeah, we need to do a revision surgery. And it's not free. And you're paying for the hospital bill, you're paying for the nurses, you're paying for every sponge and suture and time and needle. I mean, you're paying for everything again. But in my profession, it's very much assumed that the dentist should cover the cost. And I believe that's wrong. I mean, if the dentist does something wrong, they should cover it for sure. But many times it's biology, it's physics, it's maybe even something the patient does. And so I don't think that the practitioner should cover that unless it's their problem.
No. And honestly, like I remember we talked about this, that you guys dentists would be the only realm, I guess, or niche in the medical industry where that was a thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
No one else has to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big problem because it's very costly to the business for you guys to have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, even more than the cost is the stress that comes with it and the internal feeling of being a failure. Because
look at you get specific in describing it.
we many dentists, to our detriment, align our personal self-worth with our profession. And this is something I talk about in my course, that we should separate this. But when you have a patient that comes back and something broke or they're pissed off about it, they need you to redo it, you have to see them right away, but you're seeing 3 other patients as it is right now. It causes a lot of stress. And the team is stressed out, the patient's stressed out, the doctor's stressed out. And so I created a whole mini course called the Complication Compliance Method, basically on setting expectations that this is how long I expect this to last. At some point in your life, you may need to redo this, or you may need to service it, or we may need to see you more often. And when that happens, this is what the cost will be. And that resonated so much with my audience that turned into my low ticket offer. And it's really been awesome because when you boil it down, it's just communication. It's just setting expectations with patients. I mean, it's the same thing you do with your kids or with your wife. It's like sometimes my wife will call me, like just last night I was giving a lecture and on the way home, she's like, when are you going to be home? I said, well, I'm coming from LA to Orange County. I don't know. Like it could be an hour. It could be 4 hours. Like I really don't know. So I try to set low expectations, right? And so it's the same type of thing. And that really resonated with my audience.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing I talk about too, is people always they do this thing where it's like, well, here's my product and I need to message my product now to the world to try to get them to buy it. And I always say, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes we need to let the messaging dictate what the offer is going to be. And sometimes we need to let the messaging dictate even the product, because even offer and product are 2 different things. And that's exactly what it was, is like, we need to create low ticket offers. This piece of content is off the hook, like it's doing really well. So why don't we just expand on that and offer something for 27 or 97? I forget which price point bracket that one was in, but we did it and it worked. And I believe we almost did the same thing with all of your low tickets. It all stemmed from a very specific problem that people were having. And then it was like, here's a very quick solution.
Yeah, they're all very specific. They're all like, 60 to 70 minutes long. Yeah. And they've been doing really well.
And remind me of the numbers when we set up the low ticket funnel, which led then to the main ticket program. I mean, we were doing 5 figures a month within the first month or so, weren't we? Is that right? Yeah. Do you remember what those numbers were by chance?
The first month, I mean, we may have even done 10,000 in low ticket offers the first month.
Yeah. And then that led to the higher ticket stuff. And I think the thing for us, which was really cool, was that the goal is how do we get free leads or even make money off the leads to get to the webinar that sells the main product. And I think in the first month we did that literally by just paying attention to what was working inside of the content and then crafting offers around the highest engaged pieces of content.
Yeah, you basically said, "Hey, pull up your Instagram, show me what's been working, and what are like the 3 top ideas or topics," and then we talked through it and created our low tickets off of that, and they've been doing well. I mean, I sold a lot of them today.
I love it. Well, let's I'm going to ask you one more question, and that question would be it's a 2-part question. What do you think was the most impactful part of going through the process? Number one, and then number 2, what would you say to someone who's on the fence about thinking about enrolling or working with us?
I think the most impactful part was really the awareness of just how important communication is. I mean, it sounds so silly, but the number one step in changing anything is having the awareness that maybe you're not that good at it. And when I heard you speak, I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to speak like that, right? I mean, how I loved when you would do like do a hot seat and bring someone on and do like makeup. You don't know their niche. I mean, you don't know anything about what they're doing, and you pull up this amazing thought reversal, and that blew my mind. I mean, when I did that, because we had one with Colin Boyd, you did it live with me and tweaked it, and you and Colin helped me, and that ended up turning into one of my biggest pieces of content that turned into my low ticket offer. And now I'm actually getting invited to speak on that specific little niche topic.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that just happened the
Which
other
one
day.
was it?
It's the complication compliance.
Oh, it
method
is?
that
Okay,
we
great.
talked about, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And if someone was on the fence, what would your advice be?
I mean, it's really a no-brainer on this. I was like, oh my gosh, I had never spent that much on a course before, but I mean, within like a month, I made it back as far as money, right? Now, life skills, I learned so many life skills for me as an educator and as a course creator. It helped me immensely. I use it every single day. Every single day I use it, whether I'm doing webinars, live events, or like we said, talking with my wife or my kids or my neighbor.
Yeah. Your neighbor. Hey, I need you to fix your fence, man. I love it. Kyle, I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your journey with us. If there are any dentists or anyone that would like to follow you and learn more about it, or even just check your content out, where can they go?
Yeah, I mean, my main one is Instagram, so it's just Dr. Kyle Stanley, Dr. Kyle Stanley. My website is the same, drkylestanley.com.
Cool. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it, buddy.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.